Hi, this video is to provide you with an overview of the manager's tasks in Eclipse. The responsibilities, the who does what, is not changing, but the method of doing the tasks will be a little different. It's important to note that only people who have a manager role will have access to some of these functions, while others can be completed by anyone. I'm going to be covering an overview of the desktop, authorization, allocations, ending allocations, adding a new work list, reassigning work lists, and finally, adding and editing warnings. First thing I need to do, of course, is log in. And logging in will take me to my home screen. This is the default screen you will see every time you log in. First thing I'm going to show you to do is how to change to a different role. So at the moment, I'm logged in with the hospital team as my team and adult social care worker as my role. If I click on this, I can change my role to a manager role, and that will give me access to more functions in Eclipse. Now you can see I have two more buttons up here. The authorization button and the dashboard button have just appeared. By default, the work list option is selected here when you first log in. You can see that that is darker blue than the other buttons. And that shows this overview that you can see on screen now. So down the left-hand side, you can see the teams that I'm a member of. And this shows the work lists that are overdue against me on each of these teams that I belong to. So there's one for each of these teams that are overdue, one that is on time on the hospital team, and for each of the teams, there is one allocated client. The other tabs on this view, the work list view, show tasks that are assigned to me. So this piece of work that is on time. This is the client that work list relates to, Anthony Newey. Anthony New's person ID. The due date for this piece of work, date that it started, the name of the work list, and the next task in this work list, which is to submit the Conversation 3 form for authorization. On this view, there are these three dots here, and this gives me a couple of options to prioritize or reassign a work list. We'll be looking at reassigning later on. This is just another place that you can do it. But we will have a look at prioritizing while we're here. So if I click on prioritize work list, I can now choose a new priority. I'll make this priority high. And you can see now that this bar down the left-hand side has changed to red. And when I reassign this piece of work to a different person, they will receive it now as a high priority piece of work. Next tab we'll look at now is My Team's tasks. So these are the tasks, the work lists that are assigned to the team desktop. So as a manager, this is your team desktop, and stuff that is awaiting allocation or in the review system that is assigned to the team rather than to a named person. This is where you'll find it on My Team's tasks. We have the same options here. Using these three dots, we can reprioritize or reassign pieces of work. So as you manage the team desktop, this is where you can assign to different people. The final tab here is My Colleagues' tasks, and this shows pieces of work that are assigned to other people on my team. And again, it shows you the client name, due date, start date, the work list name, and the next task that is due within that work list, and who the owner of that piece of work is. Look at the next button at the top now, the authorization button. This is where you will find pieces of work waiting to be authorized. So when somebody has submitted a piece of work to be authorized, this is where you'll find it waiting for you as a manager. If you have set your notifications correctly, you may also be notified that someone has submitted a form for authorization. But that will depend on you setting up your notifications appropriately. Notifications are set up by clicking on your name here and changing notification settings. The next button to look at, allocation button. And again, there are some different tabs here. So these pieces of work or people that are allocated to me personally. So I am the allocated worker for Anthony Neri. And I get some details around him here. Anything that's underlined and blue like this can be clicked on. So clicking on his name here would take me to Anthony's record. Clicking on the phone number, if I was on my work mobile, dial the number. And clicking on the address would take me to Google Maps. And on my work mobile would take me to Google Maps, and I could use it as a sat nav to get to the address. Next tab, my team allocation. So people who were the allocated team is the team code, the team desktop. We'll be looking at that shortly. Next tab is my colleagues allocations. So these shows you people that are allocated to other people in my teams. And the recently accessed clients tab shows me people I have looked at recently. This can be set to show up to 100 people at a time. But with this training ID that I'm using, I've only looked at 3 recently. This tab performs the same function as the recently accessed records button at the top of the screen here. The final button at the top here, dashboard button, isn't set up in this training system, so there's nothing in there to show you at the moment. You'll notice on this allocation screen, there's an add person button. So this is one of the 2 places where you can add a new person. The other place is when you're already looking at a person record. There's an add person button there as well. Okay, as in care first, if clients are awaiting allocation, you would expect that they are allocated to the team code while they're waiting. So I'm going to just change the person that I'm looking at from my recently accessed button screen. I'm going to go and look at Polly. I've set her up with no allocations at all at the moment. So this is Polly's client summary screen. Not much information because I've just created her for this demonstration. A brief overview then is this is her address details and contact details. Once we've got an allocated worker or team or both, those details will be here and classifications will be recorded here. All the latest forms, an overview and chronology, classifications and key relationships will be displayed on this summary screen. In the live system, you'll also have access to finance summary, showing open commitments at the moment. Again, in this training system, that's not set up. We can get to the person details screen by clicking on the person's name here. And this is the screen where you can add additional biographical information, add or change addresses and contact details, reference numbers, etc. I won't go into details about this here because this is covered in other videos and the training sessions that you will have already seen. I'll briefly touch on these buttons here. We'll come back and look at warnings at the end of the video. Alerts is where you can add an alert to a person. Anybody has access to add alerts. Only managers have access to add warnings. Record a medical alert here. Double click for today's date. Click on save. Now we have an alert button at the top of the screen here. When we've added a warning, you'll see there's a red icon here to show that there's a warning against this person. Templates is producing template letters and outputs. And this add button here is the other place where you can add a new person to the system. Okay, to return to allocations. So for Polly, the first thing we're going to do is click on relationships. At the moment, Polly is newly created, has no relationships to people or organisations. So at the moment, I'm going to add a relationship and allocate Polly to the team code. So when I click the add button on the right hand side, I get some options: family, social, professional, organisational, or team. So I'm going to choose the team option as I want to set this allocation to the team desktop. Click on proceed. And here I get a search box to find the team name or ID. Now you don't need to know the team codes anymore. They were different in Eclipse from Care First. You can just search by team name. So for example, if I was looking for one of the Northfield teams, I just start typing North, and it will find me all the team names that contain the word North. I'm going to go for hospital, go for the hospital team. Do get an option to change here if I've selected the wrong thing. Calendar option will let me choose a date if I'm not using today's date, but I can just double click for today's date for speed. Now, importantly, I must now tick this box to mark this as the allocation. If I don't tick this box to mark this attribute of allocated team, then although we will have a relationship, we won't have a relationship of allocated team for this person. So this option here is an important one that you need to remember. Click on save. And now we have a relationship with this allocated team icon with today's start date to the hospital team. This is just a test team in the training system. Under here, under the actions column, where we can view details of the relationship, we can edit the relationship. So if, for example, we need to change the dates or we've forgotten to tick that box for allocated team, we can click on edit and update that. Or we can end the relationship. So that's what I'm going to do now. Having just created the relationship, I'm going to end this relationship so that I can show you next how to do an allocation to a person, to a named worker instead. So under actions, I select end relationship, choose the date. The end reason is mandatory. You'll notice that there's a star here. And I'd have to select either entered an error or relationship ended and click on save. So now on the relationships menu, you can see that we had an allocated team relationship and it has a start date and an end date. Under actions, the only option we get now is to view it because the relationship has ended. So that's adding and ending a team allocation. So the next thing we will do, I don't need to click on the People tab here, but I will, I just have. And if I click on the Add button again, I'm going to add this time a professional relationship. Click on Proceed. And again, I can search for the person who I'm going to allocate this client to. So I'm going to search for myself, which is the test ID that I'm using. So I don't need to know the person ID, I can just use the search function. It's very useful. I select what is my relationship to Polly. I'm going to be social worker. Oh, no, not student social worker. Social worker. The start date, I'll backdate this a couple of days. I'll go -5 for 5 days ago. And this is marked this as, because I'm logged in as the hospital team, the professionals team for this relationship is hospital team. And again, an important option here is the allocated worker attribute. If I don't tick this box, then I am not the allocated worker. I will have a professional relationship, but I won't be the responsible allocated worker. You can see here there are lots of other options to choose. But for this professional relationship, I'm just clicking on allocated worker and then save. Oh, it's come up with an error because I wasn't part of the hospital team on this date. So I'm just going to change that to today's date to get past the error message. There we go. That's just because I've created all these scenarios today for using this video. So now we have my name here in the training system, the team that I'm a part of, the allocated worker attribute, start date, no end date. And again, under actions, I have the same options I had for a professional organisation or team relationship. Add another, edit the existing relationship, or end the relationship. So I select edit. I could add that I am a key holder or guardian or any other attributes. And that will update these icons here. So that's how you add and edit and end relationships to a client. Next thing we're going to look at now is work lists and assigning work to members of your teams. Okay, I'm just going to change back to Anthony News record for this. So you can see here, I'm still in the relationships menu. I've changed people, and I am the allocated worker here. You may have noticed there's a new icon at the top here for a classification for Anthony. This classification was created automatically by a form that I've completed. So if we look at the history of the work lists against Anthony, I'm going to hide the deleted one. Hide the filter. There we go. So here we've had An initial contact that is 100% complete. In the course of this initial contact, we asked for a referral for conversation 1 and 2. Within the initial contact, we asked for that to be assigned to the hospital team. So this was assigned to the hospital team, and that was chosen from within the initial contact. That conversation 1 and 2 work list is now complete, and that has triggered a conversation 3 work list. And if we view this work list to see what stage we're at, we could see it was 33% complete. And the first task you can see has been completed. It's crossed out because it's been completed already. You can show and hide completed tasks using these options on the right hand side. The next task to do is to submit this form for authorization. So submitting the form can be done from within the form. So when the workers complete a form at the end, they can exit and submit the form. I didn't do that with this form. I decided to come a different way and submit the form from here. The other place you can do it is on the Forms menu. This conversation 3, so here's the initial contact, which is complete. Conversation 2, which is complete. That has triggered the conversation 3. Again, under actions is another place where I can choose to submit this form for authorization. So the options I get here are to view the form, submit the form, upload attachments to the form, and create an output or a document of this form. In this video, I'm going to submit this form for authorization. Looks like I've missed a question in the form. So I won't be able to submit the form until all the mandatory questions have been answered. Let's have a quick look at the form. There's a mandatory question in this section waiting to be answered. It shows me this orange triangle. I'm missing selection here. What is the single main reason for long-term support? And what will the support be for? So now, save and next, and I can exit and submit the form. So now that the form is complete, this form has a state of submitted, and my manager will have been notified, if their notifications are switched on, that there is a form waiting to be authorised. Okay, I'm going to go back to my home screen now and show you how that looks in the authorisation section. So here is the other view. I can view that form on the client record, or I can view it on my authorisation screen as a manager. And now under actions, I have some options. Obviously, I want to view the form before considering whether to authorise it or not. And I get two further options. One is to reject the form and send it back to the person that submitted it. And the other option is to authorise the form. So I'm going to reject it first. You are required to record a rejection comment here. It's a mandatory field, you can see from the start. And then you click on reject. And that will now go back to the worker. And again, if they have notifications switched on, they'll be notified. They can go back to the form, make the necessary amendments. So you can see now it has a status of rejected. I'm just going to pretend I've updated it and submit the form again. And if I go back to my manager authorization screen, this time we're going to authorize the form, which is almost exactly the same as rejecting the form. We'll view the form again, of course, to check that it's all complete and correct. And then we select authorize. And as it's a mandatory field, we have to record authorization comments. Now, it's worth stating at this stage that rejection comments and authorization comments are not part of the person record. So those comments are accessible within the system, but they're not accessible to the person when they years down the line do a subject access request. So those comments are maintained between the submitter and the authorizer. Click on authorize, and that's it. I have nothing else waiting to be authorized. And at that stage, authorizing the form has triggered the next work list that is waiting to happen. Okay, so that's rejecting and authorizing forms. And you can do it from your authorization button, or if you're looking at the client record, you can do it from the forms screen. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is how to add a new work list. Work lists are mostly triggered by the previous work list. So the outcome of one work list or one form will trigger the next work list. However, sometimes you may want to manually add one. So if in the process we need to add, for example, a safeguarding work list, on the work list screen here, we'll click on the add button, top right hand corner, and now we see all the work lists that are available to me to add. So with this role, hospital team, adult social care manager, I have access to 84 work lists. This list would be different depending on what team and role you are logged in as. This list can show up to 100, but instead of scrolling down this, I'm going to use the filter to search for the work list that I want. I'll go safe. That brings me up the work lists where the word safe is part of them, and I'll click on add a work list there. For this work list, I get the option to update the end date and time. I'll click on save. Okay, so now I've added that work list, and as I added it, that work list is assigned to me. So if you, as a manager, add a new work list, you will probably then want to reassign it to the member of staff concerned, to the allocated worker. So if we go to that work list here, use select and reassign work list. Okay, so we'll go to work list menu and choose the reassign option under actions. Here we get some options, so we can assign it to an individual owner, and by default it'll choose myself. So if I'm taking team work from the team desktop, this is the default option. And if I'm assigning to myself, I have to say, as part of which team am I taking this piece of work? I'm a member of 3 teams. It will default to the team I'm logged in as, but I do have the option to change teams if I need to. If I want to assign it to a different person, I select this option here, assign to another person, and I use the search box to find the person that I'm assigning it to. So, for example, I'm going to search for my own name. Okay, assign to the person, search for the name, and again, choose as part of which team, because the person you're assigning it to may be a member of more than one team. And then click on Save. And that work list is now assigned to me and will appear on my work lists. Yes, the safeguarding concern assigned to me. And if my notifications were switched on, I would have received notification about that. So I've decided now that I'm going to reassign this to a team desktop, so I can show you how to do that. And I could do that from the work lists menu that we looked at before, but to show you how it's done from here, as we said we would earlier, click on these three dots to show you the options. Show you prioritizing again. We'll call this a medium priority. And then reassign the work list. So we get the same options again. This time I'm going to choose a team owner. So I can assign it to the team desktop of one of my teams, or I can assign it to another team altogether. If I assign it to the Scrum Adults team, again, I don't need another team code. I can just enter the team name. And then click on Save to reassign that to a team desktop. Okay, that's adding new work lists and reassigning them to teams and people. So the final thing that we want to look at now is how to add a warning to a person record. I'm just going to swap back to Polly's record. It was Polly earlier where we added an alert. So I'm just going to go to the person details screen by clicking on Polly's name here. And here we have the warnings button, which is a manager only function. Here we choose a category for the warning. Okay, so you can see the options here. Start date. Okay, so you can see that now. I get the option to add another warning using this shortcut here. I'm just going to do the one for now, and if I click on Save, you can see there's a warning icon now next to the person name, and these will be visible on every screen that we see within Eclipse. You'll see now also that the allocated worker details have appeared here. So on the client front screen, you can see who the allocated worker is. You get the allocated worker's contact details, so you don't need to go looking for those somewhere else. And the final thing we're going to look at is how to edit a warning. So if we click on warnings, this shows the existing warning, the last time it was last edited. And to end it, I'll put an end date on it. It gives me notification of information. Click on Save, and that warning is now disappeared. Okay, that's everything for this video. We've looked at making sure that you log in with the manager role and how to change roles, an overview of all the buttons on the manager desktop, how to allocate it to a team, making sure that you allocate with the allocated team attribute, how to end an allocation, how to allocate to a member of staff, how to add a new work list, how to reassign work lists to teams and to members of staff, and then finally, how to add and end warnings.